Maybe no player in training camp captured the hearts and minds of Sabres fans quite as much as Radim Mrtka. We didn't quite know what to expect. We knew he was highly talented. We knew he was big. But the poise he played with from the prospect challenge on throughout the entirety of the preseason was really impressive. And it even gave some people hope that he might be on the NHL roster to start the year. But we found out his fate yesterday, that Radim Mrtka is going to be sent down and start the year with the Rochester Americans in the AHL. This has caused a bit of consternation for some, a bit of joy for others, and so I think it's worth talking about today and kind of looking at it from all angles of the discussion. I think when training camp started, most people were under the assumption that Radim Mrtka was going to be here for the preseason, for the prospect challenge, play a few preseason games, and then go back and play for Seattle in the WHL. I don't think there was a big discussion at the opening of the preseason activities about him actually making the AHL or even making the NHL roster. But from the prospect challenge, where he scores the first goal, on to the preseason, where he looks great in the first game against Columbus and continues to look great every time he's given an opportunity through the first half of the preseason, he made it very difficult for the Sabres front office to say, okay, yeah, you just go back to Seattle. He looked very poised. He looked very under control. Now, I think the mask started to slip a little bit in the previous game, in the first Pittsburgh game, where it was easily his worst game of the preseason. He was unable to win puck battles. He was getting himself in bad positions. He was playing out of position at times. So, obviously, that game gives us the indication he's not and there's no reason he would be, a pure NHL defenseman yet. He's not going to get the Rasmus Dahlin treatment. He's not going to get the eventual Owen Power treatment. Although Power did go to university first. So what are we looking at when we look at Radim Mrtka? Should he go to junior, back to Seattle? Should he play in the AHL with Rochester? What was that discussion all about? Also, his situation is very unique. So I want to talk about that first. So usually, if a player is under contract with a Canadian Hockey League team, Canadian Major Junior League team, they cannot be sent to the AHL squad while still a member of that Canadian junior team. They are that team's player. Now, if they go to make the NHL, that supersedes that. But otherwise, they have to respect their contract with that Canadian Hockey League team until they age out, or they're going to play in the NHL. That's why a lot of prospects go back to their junior league team and then come back and play in the AHL in the playoffs, and then the next year go up and play in the NHL. That's their way of kind of respecting the contract they have with the major junior leagues in Canada, and also respecting their contract with their NHL team. So a lot of development happens there. A lot of development happens in the CHL, a lot of development happens in the NCAA, and even some development happens in the American Major Junior League as well. We see that with the various Sabres players who are under contract to junior teams, who are shipped out at the end of camp every year. Mrtka's situation is a little bit different because he was under contract to his team in the Czech Republic. So he's under contract with a European team, and he was loaned to the Seattle Thunderbirds by the European team last year. So the team that holds his rights outside of the NHL is actually a professional Czech team. So the Sabres are able to do what they want with him, and they will still have the option of sending him to the WHL if the need arises. So they have some flexibility, which you don't typically get with players in this situation. So there's a lot of things the Sabres could be doing here. First, this could be a legitimate decision. They're going to send him down to Rochester, and they're going to let him play there the whole year. They're going to let him learn the professional North American game. They're going to let him get a lot of experience and kind of learn on the fly against bigger competition in a league that is very competitive, and in a league where teams are really out to win and players are out. A lot of players are there to win, not just to get an NHL shot. A lot of players in the AHL know they're not going to get an NHL shot. They're just enjoying playing in North America, trying to win with the team they are on. Option 2 is he's being held in Rochester as a depth piece with all the injuries right now. There's no real intention to develop him in Rochester, and he's going to get sent to Seattle when the depth situation clears itself up. If there's more injuries, he might even find himself in Buffalo. But there is the slide year issue where if he plays 10 games or more, his entry-level contract will start. The clock will start on that contract. Ordinarily, the contract does not start if he doesn't play 10 NHL games until he turns 20. So the Sabres still have 2 years of development they can do without his entry-level contract starting. That's a really good thing that the Sabres have in their pocket. And that's one reason why I thought so much he was going to go to the WHL, because the Sabres have the luxury of time. They don't need to make him develop at the professional level right away. They can give him some time to go and dominate. But with the injuries, maybe he's a depth piece. The third option is this is an experimental run. See how he does against the AHL competition. If he's totally overmatched, they can send him off to junior, try to be flexible with it. I think that's maybe the most likely scenario. They want to see how he'll handle the competition. If what we saw in camp was a flash in the pan, or if that really is his level coming into his professional career. If that really is his level coming into his professional career, he will get the time and minutes he needs in Rochester to develop. So those are really the three ways this could go. Now, there have been voices all over the organization, outside the organization, experts in the organization, talking heads who know a lot of things about player development and so on. There's some concern that this is a move that is going to be rushing Mrtka's development and could ultimately do more harm than good. And I would agree, but for one thing, and that is that Radim Mrtka is big enough to compete with the men who play in the AHL. If he was undersized physically as a defenseman, I would say, yeah, no. Send him to junior. Don't let him get, beat down. He doesn't quite have the confidence or the savvy to play at the professional level yet. But with his current size, and clearly in preseason, he was bringing the physicality. He wasn't shying away from checks. He wasn't shying away from hits. He was bringing the physicality against professional tier players. He was getting involved. He was taking shots. He was all over the ice in a lot of situations. I think that showed them that he's not going to be intimidated by any situations. I mean, even in the first preseason game, he's getting in there and mixing it up with some Blue Jackets players. Like, that's rare to see from a rookie. Usually rookies take a step back, they take the game in, they don't go out, they're not so active as Mrtka was for us in the preseason. So that's a point towards going to Rochester, of course. The point for going to the WHL, going back to Seattle, is he'll get his minutes guaranteed. 100% he will get 25 minutes a night. He'll be the number one guy for Seattle. He'll be able to dominate for Seattle. He'll have a chance to be in that role, that leadership role for Seattle. He'll get to be truly their number one player, their superstar, and he'll get to lead that team throughout the regular season and into the postseason. And there's something to be said for developing leadership skills in that way. If you don't get the chance to do that, it's very difficult to do that later on in your career, because you're never going to be in a position straight up where you have to learn how to be a leader. He's not going to have to be a leader on the Sabres right away, but he's not like he's going to be a leader in Rochester. It's not like he's going to be a leader in Buffalo yet. I would like to put him in a chance where he could build those leadership skills, because we don't know what's going to happen. If the Sabres are really bad this year and they don't make the playoffs, we still have to keep an eye on the future. Sabres are really bad. They don't make the playoffs. Alex Tuch doesn't re-sign. Rasmus Dahlin wants out. In that case, our future number one defenseman is Radim Mrtka, because he won't be able to get out yet. He will be right there, the most important player in the organization, probably. He'll be the next Rasmus Dahlin, essentially, if it plays out in that way. So, with an eye to the future, you would like him to have that time being the number one player on a team, having the chance to lead a team, be the guy who has to be the guy who sets everyone up, learn how to score goals at that level. You might say, yeah, the competition's weak. That's fine. It's not about the competition. It's about learning how to win and learning how to be a leader. And having guys be the guy who wins the game, who controls the game, that's extremely important, especially for a defenseman who that is the role we envision for him, perhaps in the future. So yes, in the AHL, he'll get to struggle against high-level competition. He'll get to learn the game better. He'll probably get a more physical edge to his game. And He might even get substantial minutes, but he's not going to get that opportunity to be the guy. And I think that is very important. That is a very important part of development that's often missed. Of course, playing in Rochester, a good point is that the organization will be able to keep close tabs on him. There will be a direct pipeline of communication from team to team. They'll know exactly what he's doing. They'll know exactly what his plan is. They'll know exactly what to work on with him. So that is actually much better for his overall development in terms of developing in a way that the Sabres want him to develop. So it could end up being a very good thing. Again, only if there's continuity, though, because if this season goes badly and everyone gets fired, then could have a whole different system coming in. There could be no continuity, and it could actually just end up, tanking the whole thing. But, Kevyn Adams is not playing for someone else's future as GM. He's playing for what he envisions as his future. And in his mind, the genius mind of Kevyn Adams, Sabres are going to be great this year. He does not envision bad things happening. He's a very optimistic general manager, and when he's a very confident in his decisions, regardless of whether or not they've worked out in the past or not. So obviously he's not playing for the future, but for us as fans, and for Mrtka as a player, it might be better to just stay clear of this whole mess and just have a really good, enjoyable season out in Seattle where he can be the guy. And then if everyone gets fired, he gets to come in clean slate, and he can maybe be the guy here because all the veteran people will have been cleared out at that point. You'll also get a unique case where you'll actually have had a guy who was in that role as the number one defenseman, the captain, the leader. You'll have him coming in having been in that position before. Whereas in the case of Rasmus Dahlin, he was never in that position. He was a very good player in his time in Sweden before he got drafted number one overall, but he was never in a leadership role. And I think it really took him time to get used to everything that came with being that defenseman, that level of a defenseman. So obviously Dahlin, a way more talented. Dahlin is like a once-in-a-generation talent that a team gets as a defenseman. There's no supplement for having that time to be the guy before you have to be the guy. Right? You cannot replicate that until you're in that situation. So I think there is something to be said for giving him the shot to be the guy. Even though, it makes way more developmental sense to keep him in Rochester, have him play against better competition, keep him in the developmental pipeline. There's a lot more individual arguments for keeping him in Rochester, or at least starting him in Rochester. So I'm not opposed to either decision, but my gut says, because I understand from the perspective of this administration, this GM, this coach, imagine they're going to win and they're going to stay. But from the long-term perspective of someone whose job does not depend on what the Sabres do year to year, I think it's better for the organization to have him go and play junior hockey for a year. And if this is a great year this year for the Sabres, great. He can come back and join and be a reinforcement. If it's a bad year for the Sabres, he can come in and kind of elevate. Automatically, you have a guy who you would be drafting very high. Like, you have an accelerated start to your rebuild. And you have a guy who now has experience in a really top-tier, high-level role, which is irreplaceable. So how you feel about this move depends on how close you think the Sabres are. If you think the Sabres are going to be able to retain this core and compete for playoff spots and compete for deep runs and compete for championships with this current core, I think you're very happy that Mrtka is in Rochester and he's fairly close to coming up. If you're more pessimistic about this core, then you probably actually want him in junior because you don't want him coming over until this core has kind of been phased out. So I think how you feel about this move is totally going to be in step with your feeling about this core. And I know people have different feelings about this group of players that are in Buffalo right now. So people are going to have different opinions about this move. But I don't think there's any reason to rush him to the AHL because, again, he has those slide years. You can have him go to a year in junior. It's not going to hurt his development. Ultimately, my feeling, I'm a cautious guy. I would rather have him have that year of development in the WHL, even though everything I've said pretty much makes Rochester seem like the better choice. But I worry about him not having that top tier role. And I worry about him losing maybe some confidence if he goes into a long period of struggle. Yes, of course. Now, he has to overcome that. Every player does. Every player has to go through that, has to adjust, has to overcome it. But we don't need him to do it now. And by making him do it now, it could have a more negative impact, I think, overall on his development. So I don't think there's any reason to rush, but I do understand the move. There's one other point that relates to this, and that is if you want to develop your other defensemen, if you want to develop those guys like Komarov, Novikov, Mrkta, then this is actually not a good move for the overall defensive depth in the organization, because you'd like to see some of those guys getting top line minutes in Rochester, as opposed to Mrtka, who we know is going to be very good, who is very early in his development cycle, who you can have him play top line minutes somewhere else, which is still a fairly high level of hockey, while also giving your guys who are nearing the end of their development cycle a chance to have one more year, and then you might have found some depth guys or some bottom line. I mean, let's be honest. Mattias Samuelsson, he's going to be on his way out, probably, you would think. I can't imagine the Sabres continue this farce of having a guy who can't play, but they can't continue this farce of having Mattias Samuelsson saying, oh, this is going to be the year he plays well. I mean, he's dropped down the rankings every year, and he's hurt all the time. Owen Power is totally a question mark, whether or not his development has flamed out or not. You have just a lot of questions. It's deep, but you have a lot of questions on this core. If the team is really bad and Tuck doesn't come back, Rasmus Dahlin might want out. So you're in a situation with these defensemen where, again, it could get very bad very quickly. You would want to be developing guys who can come in for the situation we're facing now, where there's a lack of players and a lack of depth. And I would much rather have solid guys that we have developed in our system than having to patch with a bunch of these really mid-tier level guys. Like, it's not great. Nobody feels great about rolling Connor Timmins out there in such an important role, or the ultimate mid player, Jacob Bryson. Nobody wants that out there at the bottom of your bottom six. If you would actually take the time to develop some of these guys, give them the minutes, like, for example, Komarov just came over, right? Last year, they're doing the same thing with Komarov, with Mrtka, that they did with Komarov. He comes over, and they say, okay, you're going to play in the AHL. And he's like, great, I'm going to play in the AHL. He steadily improved throughout the year last year. He's a guy who needs top-line minutes. You'd like to see some of the other guys down there get top-line minutes. And you don't really want Mrtka taking those minutes yet, because he doesn't have to. So maybe for him, the best thing is to develop at Rochester. But for the whole organization, I think it's better to get him those top minutes elsewhere and get other guys top line minutes. Just in terms of efficiency, if you can have more guys playing more minutes, that's going to be better for your overall team development, I would say. So there's a lot of arguments all over for what you could do in this situation. I'm more in the camp of send him to the Western Hockey League. I'm more in the camp of send him back to Seattle. I'm fine they sent him to Rochester. Like, it doesn't bother me, but for the reasons I mentioned, especially there at the end, organizational development, not just individual development, and for the intangibles he could develop just being the guy in Seattle, I would rather see him over there. But for other reasons, like learning to play against higher level competition, developing kind of within the organizational framework, how they want him to develop, the ability to communicate about what he needs to improve and then get that information into him very quickly. That's very, very valuable. So I can definitely understand people who are on that side of the fence as well. So what do you think about it? I think this is probably the biggest topic being discussed these days in the Sabre community as we gear up for the season. So feel free to leave your thoughts down below. And that's all for Radim Mrtka. We have 2 more player profiles coming. I'll try to get those out in the next 2 days. Josh Norris and Tage Thompson. I'll have a season preview coming, and then we'll be off and running for the 2025-2026 NHL season. So thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. And if you want more Sabres content, please subscribe. Conscribe? Is that even a word? It's like conscript. Anyway, please subscribe to the channel. As always, go Sabres. Bye-bye.